for those who are going to be looking and listening to this, in the replay, I'll make sure I put a link, for the campus so you can join and get some of this really good information. But she did a post, and it was awesome. I know Eric and some other people who commented on it, and I immediately was like, we got to go live. We got to do a live on this because and we'll just put it out there. Not everybody leaves for money because of money. I know you and I are going to talk about that, but I just wanted Bangkok. You're Bangkok. Sorry, Eric. Why did I say Bali? I think that's where I want to go. Remember, I think that's the conversation Eric and I had that I wanted to go to Bali. You're Bangkok. My apologies. And it's not money. And so I just want to put that out there because once again, you and I are not going to be talking about that as a reason why people leave because you and I both know that it's not about that. So we're going to do this format. Everybody that's listening and looking at this, we're going to do. Sylvia has three reasons and ideas, and then I have three, and then we're just going to go back and forth like tennis. And of course, ladies first, and I will let you go and have the floor. And we'll have some banter on your topic.
Please do.
Yeah,
So, regarding the article, and
yeah.
that's my first point really, is that I talked about collective illusion. I sometimes like to call it collective delusion, right? Because it's the misinterpretation of what is your ideas, your beliefs, right? Your sensory interactions with the world. And many times organizations, and especially I always speak through the lens of HR, right?
Hmm.
We run interventions, we implement things based on our beliefs, but it's not grounded in data and is not, based on what people actually want. So
Mm,
I always say, and if you look at that report, it showed exactly the same, right?
hundred
What
percent.
people want and what we think people want. And most of the time, we take actions based on what we think people want, but we don't actually know.
No, no.
We don't know. We go with that, false narrative. And I always urge leaders, even if you take data, because I'm very much data driven, a
Hmm.
data driven person. But you cannot go blindly after any kind of global surveys, any
Yeah,
kind of regional surveys. You always look at what's happening within your workforce. And I think it's a very reasonable approach, because just look at the health watch,
mm,
right?
hmm,
So
hmm.
everybody is going crazy on their health watch, and the global data says that we all have to sleep 8 hours, and all of a sudden you would be sleeping just 7 hours and you are completely fine, but your watch telling you no, you're not supposed to be fine because
Mm,
you missed 1 hour of sleep.
hmm.
So that will have a greater impact on you than the actual sleep, because maybe you are okay with 7 hours of sleep. So
You're right.
data is fantastic, but we also should be always we should always be looking at what's happening within our environment, or teams in this case.
Yeah, it's interesting because when people put things out there like 8 hours of sleep, um, or whatever a standard, is right, and they try to they not try, but they do, for the most part, back it up with data.
Mm.
Um, they don't. A lot of times, it becomes very rigid over time, and it doesn't allow for adaptation or even customization for the individual. To your point around, let's carry the sleep and a narrative a little further, right? You know, when I was in the Air Force, I didn't need 8 hours of sleep, and I was 100% fine. But was I younger? Yes. Now, even as I'm older now, I still don't need a lot of sleep.
Mm.
Because I get up at 4 every morning, and I still get a lot done. From that 4 a.m. to like 9, I get so much done. It's ridiculous, and so I don't necessarily fall into that like I need 8 hours of sleep
Mhm.
narrative. And I think we have to, and this goes into sort of this corporate perspective around. rules and regulations and ideas and processes and things that we put in place with our teams and our organizations, and we don't leave any room for adaptation. And when they become sort of this the an edict, you know
Mm,
i'm I'm not going to fall. I'm not following this edict, and so guess what? People end up leaving. So that's a little bit of my perspective on that one. You know,
totally.
yeah. You know, everybody that's out here, if you have a question, please don't hesitate. Hey, Marlon, how are you doing? Good to see you here. If you have a
Now,
question or a thought or a comment, please don't hesitate, because this is not just Sylvia and I having a conversation. This is a conversation for you and your organization, or for you as a leader. Um, so one of the things that my first point in and talking to my daughter, talk to her just too much, just too much. I talk to my daughter too much. And then, because she's in this growth phase. I know you and I maybe had this conversation before too. Like, she's in this growth phase of her career,
mm,
and now she's just trying to figure what the next steps are within that journey. And she's been assessing people on her team, and also her potential team, if she gets this new opportunity, this new role within the company. And she's going down the line and she's talking about certain people. And one of the things that happens is that she's identified in what I call a silent stabilizer within the
mm,
organization. It is that individual where they are super stable in their role. They're a producer of results. Um, they are sort of the go-to person within that organization. However, that person is stagnant. That person doesn't get the information. They don't get the development that they need, and they end up just staying where they are. However, they are invaluable to the company. But the company doesn't say that. So there's this like silent dance that takes place with those individuals and the company. And while we may think that they're happy, right, because they're getting the results, they may be getting a nice
mhm,
bonus and things like that. They have fallen into this role of being this silent stabilizer. And over time, when they sort of wake up, when they you think about the movie The Matrix, where they take sort of the blue pill, right? They sort of get out of this
mm.
fray, out of this, the veils come off of their eyes, and they're like, hold it for a second. I'm doing all of this work and I'm not really getting recognized. I'm not getting developed. I'm seeing other people get promoted, and something's amiss here. And I think we see this more than we think we do. It's those people who are producing, and they're consistent with their production, but no one's investing in them. So, if you are a leader, if you I know how much you love HR, Sylvia, and I know how much you love HR. Sylvia has like an HR tattoo. That's how much she loves HR. I am being very cynical. But you have people in HR who are the gatekeepers to individuals like that. So I just think we have to make sure that we take a harder look at those people who are on our succession plan and who are in our organization, who are those silent stabilizers.
It's so interesting that you are talking about it, because I had just a very similar conversation with somebody this week. And it goes back to so many aspects, right?
Hmm.
Organizations love these silent people because they get the job done, they don't cause any trouble, they are quiet, and that's it. Now, two options or three options. Either that person stays there forever and wakes up 10 years later, oh my God, what happened?
Yeah.
Everybody left, I'm the only one in here. Or, the job becomes redundant, or
Yeah.
things change, and all of a sudden that person finds him or herself with only one skill, one
Mm.
experience out in the big wide world, and not knowing what to do because never been exposed to anything else, right? So it's a very dangerous game, if I'm honest. Now the
Yeah.
second part of it is that organizations are the talent management system is not designed to pick up on these quiet ones. And
Mm,
I had the
mm,
same conversation that we know many people, right? Very quiet, do the job, we can rely on them. They would die for the company, right?
yeah,
But we don't look at them as potential. I think we confuse potential or confuse being loud and demanding with potential.
mm,
And because who gets the promotion?
yeah,
Who is always out there showing him or herself, right? Who is always out there talking about something, not necessarily producing or performing, but visibility.
yes,
Now, nobody is looking at these guys, the quiet ones, for many reasons. One is the managers are too busy
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
to even notice who is not quiet, right?
mm-hmm,
They sometimes give out the signal that they are happy where they are. So we
yeah,
don't even approach them. So talent management, and that's why I always say we need to move away from this annual appraisal saga. We
mm,
need to have a talent database for every person, for the organization. Every person must have a profile, and we need to have career conversations maybe twice a year
mm,
because we don't actually know what these people want, because
correct.
these are not our conversations during the annual appraisal. Yes, we ask the question, what do you want in the future, but it's so vague,
Mm.
it's not giving anything.
Yeah, I've seen it happen in succession planning meetings, right? And so you will have your, I'm sitting around with all of my peers, and we all have our succession plans out, and we're going line by line with our teams. And I've heard people say this: I can't move them. If I move that person, like that store will fall apart, or my market will fall apart. And I'm just like, well, what about them? Like,
Yes.
what about what they want? I mean, I heard it so many times throughout my career, and it infuriates me because, to your point, we have not sat down with with the leaders and ask them what they want. And I'll go back to my daughter too, just for a second here. And I know she should be watching this. I don't know why she's not here. I'm gonna talk crap about her. Uh, she's in this phase of, like, when they were asking her, like, what does she want, and she was like, I'm not sure what I want. I'm not sure what I want. And it's not necessarily her fault per se. It was that organization didn't necessarily have these sort of growth conversations with her sort of throughout her journey, right? She's always had me as sort of this external coach to
Mm-hmm.
to to throw ideas off of, and I would give some sage advice, but the organization never really provided some of those things, and so she's in this she's in this precarious position where they want her to do bigger things, but she's just like, I'm not particularly sure what that may be. So we have two sides of the coin, but I think the through line is that organizations need to do a better job of having those developmental conversations throughout the course of the year, right? Because if you are waiting for the performance review to talk to somebody and tell them that, this is where I see you, and they're like, well, I see you going over here to this other market. Well, hold it for a second. Well, I can't because I've a wife, I have 3 kids. They're in little league over here. They're doing all this. I can't do this, right? So I'm glad you think of me like that. But if you had a conversation with me back here,
Mm.
I would have been able to let you know, sort of my requirements or where I need to be. But we're not having those conversations, and that just upsets me in the context that you have all these people in corporate, and they are the gatekeepers, but they are not having these conversations, and when someone says that they can't do something, they get upset. I'm
Mm.
just going to keep it real. They get upset when someone rebuffs their succession plan that you have thrusted upon them, and they're like, and you're supposed to be super grateful that, oh, thank you, sir. Please, sir. Was it Oliver Twist? Like, please, sir. Uh, right? And you're supposed to be thankful that they're giving you this, and no, it's not. No, you need to have these conversations up front. All right, let me get off my My soapbox. You know how we get, Sylvia. Hey,
It,
Felicia and Christine.
it's so true, and we need to be grateful for it. Whatever is given, and if you, God forbid, say, "Hey, I can't take that role because I have, whatever story I have," then forget about being offered one more time because
Come on,
now
come on.
now, now you are labeled as that you don't want it, or you are not, grateful for the opportunity you are given. So it's manifold, but I always push it back. Of course, it's both sides, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
True.
organizations is not equipped to deal with that. We don't even have data. To be
Mm,
honest, we don't
hmm.
have data how long Steve or Sylvia has been sitting in this corner.
Yeah,
We know. We know you when you joined, but what you've been doing up until now, what skills you have developed, or what you have, or what you don't have, we have no idea, or what you want. And and also the other part is the employees. So I always urge and I always pass this message to the employees. Look, don't wait for anybody.
yeah.
Don't wait for anyone. You need to go and figure out what you want. So going back to your daughter, right? If you don't know what you want, not even the organization can help you.
Hmm,
So
hmm.
organizations can maybe help with career coaching, right? Because we don't want a person to sit there for 10 years. I would
Right.
be asking the question, so tell me, let's figure out what's next for you, right? And that leads directly to my second point about employee engagement surveys and any kind of survey or anything that we do within organizations. They are not telling us the truth
Mm,
in terms of what's important for the employees. We measure what is important to us,
yes.
but
Yes.
not that has nothing to do with what is important to the employees, what their concerns are, what would make a change or difference in their lives. Is everything about what is important to us, when
Hmm.
or when surveys were designed and that time these things were important. So I
Right.
always looked at employee engagement surveys, and I filled out so many, and 90% of those questions I were not interested about. Like, I didn't
Mm-mm,
care. I'm like,
mm-mm.
why are you giving me questions that I'm not interested? And yes, they will say, but there are, these free books you can write. Nobody will write. Like, nobody will write. Okay. So we measure what, somebody came up with 5 decades ago, those questions. Today, we don't ask the question, are these questions still relevant?
Yes.
Based on what these questions were designed? Are they geographically relevant?
Hmm.
Are they relevant in terms of the age groups? Like, why are we asking the same question from a 20 years old as the 60 years old?
Yes.
Surely there must be some
Just a
differences.
little bit. Just a little bit.
So none of this makes sense. And I always advocated for stop doing these annual surveys, okay?
Mm,
Because they produce false data that is not related to real life. And therefore, it's guiding us towards the wrong approach, and we just waste money. And we never look. We've been doing these surveys for 3 decades,
hmm.
right? And the needle in terms of engagement has not moved. If anything, it's dropped this year again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after 3 decades, I think it's reasonable to conclude it's not working.
But Sylvia, I paid all of this money and it's something that we do every year. This is part of our culture. So what are you telling me to stop?
Yeah, I know it's really hard to let something go, even if it's not working. But it makes it easier if we find an alternative.
You know what the issue is? Hey, Felicia. Felicia says, good morning. Says, I was
Hi, Felicia.
facilitating a training yesterday, and the group brought up this topic. Very important. So awesome. I don't know. See, of course, I have the very sort of this American perspective on a lot of things, and I know there are a lot of other organizations around the world that may do this, but I've always worked for bigger companies, and they would do these surveys, and I call it like the publication phenomenon, is that they would do a lot of these employee surveys, And then they would get the results, and then a lot of these publications would rank the organizations based off of the employee surveys and the results of those employee surveys. And so it almost just became this exercise in futility, but more importantly, just became this exercise to get your company into these publications. So that way you can go and say, hey, we're number 10 out of, 50, companies ranked for the, employee experience, right? Based on this survey. And I think that that lends itself to your issue with the questions, because those questions are softballs, right? Those questions are very basic, but also those questions are similar from company to company, because a lot of them were built on some of the requirements to be a part of this publication, right? This annual review of companies. This is what we're looking for. So guess what? The companies would actually organize a lot of their questions based on the requirements of the publication. They're not even thinking about their own company or the people who are there, right? They're thinking about getting in that magazine, so that way I can be on stage and have one of my PowerPoint slides, like boom, have say, hey, we're number 7 out of no, out of 50 companies that that, and then they, how they cherry pick the best results, right? We have the best break rooms, you know out of the 50 that are on this list. We have the best break rooms, right? And so I know I'm beating up companies a lot. I apologize, but it's, part of it is because you need it, but the other part is that we have to get away from, we have to pull back the curtain on a lot of these, of the rationale of why companies do what they do. We have to pull it back. We have to pull it back.
Oh, totally. Look, if you don't face reality, you can't solve your problems, right?
Hmm.
So we surveyed the workforce to that. Nothing has changed. Employee engagement surveys never solved any problem. And just for those of you who don't know how these surveys work and these awards, sorry, let me tell you that one of them, which is probably the most famous one, the minimum threshold where you can get your badge is 67% employee
Yeah,
satisfaction.
yeah, yeah.
So
Hmm.
now you can even produce 90%, 100%, whatever. It doesn't make any difference because today's workforce is very smart. First of all, they forget about the internet.
Yeah.
Okay? So
Oh.
you can showcase 90%, but then I go on Glassdoor or I go on other platforms and forums and I immediately find out what it's like working for you.
Mm.
Or I enter the workforce, I join your company, and and then my expectation is really high because this is supposed to be a great place, right? Or a fantastic place to
Mm.
work. And all of a sudden I see the exact opposite. Now, what is going to happen when your expectation is not met is going to impact the level of resilience. And then you're going to
Mm.
pay for resilient management training because, oh, Sylvia is not resilient. She's running away. No, you set the bar this high, but this is what you deliver. So I'm just realistic.
I know. Oh my goodness.
And
Oh my goodness.
but it's exactly leads once again to the third point, to my third point, that we don't actually know because these surveys don't tell us where we lose talent,
Mm. Yeah.
what is
Yeah.
broken within the
Yeah.
organization, what
Yeah.
works,
Yeah.
if you ask any HR leader and you ask them, do we have the talent that we need to achieve business goals? We don't know. Do we know where we lose talent, which part of the
Yeah.
employee life cycle? We don't know. Do we know
Hmm.
what is working? We don't know. We're just doing. And instead of measuring those 7 areas and
Hmm.
each touch point the employee is interacting with, we run these annual surveys and with no reason. It's
Yeah.
literally just money being flushed down the toilet
Yeah. Yeah.
because they don't give us any information. Steve, I have run so many surveys, and I can tell you, if I'm honest, The best case scenario, we produced an action plan after the survey
Mhm.
result,
Mhm.
and we spent maybe 2 weeks of doing something about it, and then we forgot it very quickly.
Mm.
Nothing has ever
Mhm.
been done
Mhm.
as a result of employee survey.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. We're running we're running, speaking of surveys, right? We're running a leadership development survey, right? Of the first one I think of its kind within the retail space. And, you know, we have, we have close to 400 people so far. We're trying to get over the 500 mark, for people to take the survey, and then we're gonna, look at the results and produce our own report.
Mhm.
And I'm trying my best not to look at any of the information, so I don't get create some confirmation bias, on some of the results. But
Mhm.
I did look at one of the I won't say one. I looked at a couple of them, and part of it was, they feel no one's is listening, and then part of it is there's this wide, chasm of, when a person starts to when they leave. So there is so much space in between that. And I think if every company looked culturally, right? Because you can't throw a blanket statement of perspective on when employees leave, like across
Mhm.
an industry, right? Or a vertical or whatever. You can't do that because it's about the culture. To your point, it's about the culture within the organization, and no one wants to do that. One of the parts of the book I'm writing, it's a you know the second half of the book talks about the some pillars of simplicity. One of them is, defining the problem, and going through and uncovering the messy why. Right? Simon Sinek has gotten us all talking about, start with why, but the problem is no one does. Right? Everybody wants to start to go to the solution, right? Because we get recognized for the solutions that we create. But part of that messy why no one wants to do it is because, it will uncover aspects of things that we didn't do, questions that we didn't ask, um, conversations that we failed to execute on, initiatives, to your point, that started off really well but then lost zeal. Right? We have to take a look at why certain things didn't happen or didn't occur, and no one wants to do that. And I think that's 100% why no one wants to. No one has really developed culturally within their organizations. What's the breaking point when people leave? Right? Because guess what? Now, if we identify that, then maybe we have to fire that person, or we have to give them some resilience training or something, right? Or maybe it's me, or maybe I'm the reason. Why no one wants to know that, but that's the whole issue. The entire issue is because we haven't dealt with the messy why, because of how it makes us look. So we have to get past it. That's human nature, but that's part of the issue of why we have to do it. So,
Absolutely. Nobody wants to face the truth. But I think companies can handle that, in many ways, right? There's
mhm,
not just one way of doing things. One of the ways is, if people can't handle the truth and you
mm,
really want to make a difference and change in the organization, you have to change the management,
yeah, yeah,
right? Because then I come in and I say, okay, it doesn't matter who was that. I don't even know the people. The purpose is the goal is to fix this situation.
yeah,
The goal is not to blame anybody else. It is what
mm,
it is, right? And not asking the why is so interesting. Yesterday, I had a conversation with a head of HR, and the person was asking me, can you do succession planning for me? I'm like, sure.
mm,
I'm like, can I ask a few questions? And he says, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, what is your turnover rate?
mm.
And let's say it's really high. Let's say it's extremely high, okay? And I said, I'm like, look, why would you even invest in succession planning when people are coming and going? I'm like,
Come
it
on.
doesn't make any sense. If you have 20%, 15%, then it's a stable workforce relatively. There we can plan. I'm like, when people are coming and going constantly, I'm like, why would you invest in that rather than looking at why people are coming and going in the first place? And he had no answer. So the why that nobody is questioning, and I always urge any leader, wherever position you are or whatever department, don't just go with the flow. Don't just do things because everybody is doing it, right?
Mm, mm,
Look at what is relevant to my workforce. What is relevant to my business? What would work? What wouldn't work? In this particular case, in that business or CHRO, I said, don't do succession planning. It's a waste of energy time.
yeah.
By the time you finish the exercise, half of your workforce left. What the hell are you planning? And
You have nobody
so
to plan with.
nobody to succeed. And so that's what I always talk about. And you know me, I
Yeah.
always push common sense approach.
Mm,
Forget about what people are saying, and that applies to the data most of the time, because every company is doing well-being initiative. I need to do it. I don't have
yes.
to do anything,
Yes.
because do I need it? Do my people need it? Have I asked my workforce? Instead, constantly ask the workforce. And going back to your point, which I wrote an article this week in terms of the, people tell you that nobody is listening to them in
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
surveys. The engagement surveys don't work on a silent workforce.
Mm,
They don't
mm,
work on a
mm.
workforce that we already let down by these surveys, because we
Yeah.
asked them
Yeah.
10 times, and 10 times we did absolutely nothing. Now they're giving us nothing.
Yeah. 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 100%. I mean, you didn't even listen to me the first time. So why would I want to take it again? And it becomes this task every year where it's like, okay, here it comes again. And
Mhm.
it's just okay. I mean, I can go further. I don't know. I think I'm on my second point here. I don't know if I am or not. I think I am. Maybe I am. I don't know. This one, this one actually sort of hits home. Hey, Cher. Hey, Dirk. How are you both
Hi,
doing?
guys.
Once again, if anyone has a question or a comment, please don't hesitate to put it in there. But just share your thoughts. This one is a little personal because I share this one in my um, in the book I'm writing, was that where a leader has outpaced the growth of their boss. And I had a situation where I was leading a person. This was this was years ago, and they were amazing leader, and sort of a go-to person, didn't need a lot of direction, right? And just awesome. But then they started to be a little more distant and a little more disengaged. And I said, okay, well, they always figure it out. They always kind of figure things out. You know, time went on. They gave me their letter of resignation. I was like, whoa, what's going on? I was literally like
Mm.
blindsided by it. And part of their reasoning for leaving is like, well, you seem too busy, for me, Steve. You seem like you had a lot of things going on. I was pretty much putting task over people, projects over people, all these different things. And so they left. years later, years later, as I was thinking about that situation, and I was on this really high growth trajectory, like just consuming tons and tons of leadership stuff. I look back on that incident, and what I realized was that I couldn't lead that person anymore. I had capped out. I was at my cap of leadership, my leadership quotient, and they were right there with me,
Mm.
and I didn't have any more to give them. So instead of me recognizing that, I pushed myself into tasks and things and ideas and things, anything but to help or even redirect this person to someone who had a deeper level of leadership that can actually bring them to the next level. and they left. And I wonder how many leaders leave because their boss is literally not giving them what they need not because their boss doesn't have it to give,
Mm,
right? Part of that could be, you know, organizationally, right? With succession planning and really identifying talent and understanding where people are within their journey, not within their role, meaning that okay, this person can go to this next role. Yes, but where are they from a leadership quotient standpoint? Just because that may be the next natural job or role for them, does that mean that they actually are equipped to handle it? And a lot of times, especially in the retail space, they're not. But they
mm.
get thrust into that position because there's a hole for them to fill. And so, I think we have to as leaders understand ourselves a lot better of where when we have capped out and we have no capacity, right? Talk about that a lot with leaders nowadays. Like leaders are like coming up against it. They have not created any capacity or margin in their lives. They're always going at 100%, 100 miles an hour,
Mm.
and we have to create more margin in our lives in order for us to grow and learn more so that way we can give more out. But we have to help leaders understand that idea and that perspective a little more.
Do you think you would have figured it out at that time if the guy told you that
You
instead
know,
of resigning?
no, I think I would have resisted. I think I would
Mm,
have resisted. I was immature in my leadership. I was probably fresh, probably maybe 4 years out of the military. Um, and so I was very, opinionated, very much a driver of results. And, that military sort of command and control leadership will only take you so far. So I think even if they said something to me, um, I wouldn't have listened. But here's what happened too. And I actually had a peer who took me out to lunch, and I write about this, and it's called "Everybody Needs a Victor in Their Lives." And
mm,
he took me out to lunch, and he's from New York too. And this we were living in I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time, and he took me out to lunch, and he just went right to the point, right to the point. He said, "Steve," I was like, "Yeah, what's going on, man?" He says, and forgive my I hope they don't like shadow ban me, but he said, "Steve, that shit don't work down here." Excuse me. So what are you talking? What are you talking? That shit don't work down there. Like, what do you mean? He's like, all of this, command and control, because he was former military too.
mm.
He was 10 years removed, right? So he had time to work through his issues, right? So he's like, that doesn't work down here, right?
Mm.
And I remember he said, you have to, he told me this, and I literally was like, what are you talking about? He said, you have to ask them how their week was. It's like, what? What do you know? What do you mean? He's like talk to them. I'm like,
Mm.
no, I'm not talking to them. Like I'm giving them things that they need to do. He said, Steve, they respect you, but they're fearful of you. And that
Yeah.
was after the person had left. I said, man, you're about a year too late.
Mm.
But that also helped push me to the realization of where I knew that I had come up to a limit of my leadership, and part of that now has driven me to this phrase that my teams always hated, me to say was like, you have to change before it's necessary, right? All of those situations caused me to have that sort of mantra, an underpinning of everything in my life is that you have to change before it's necessary.
Mm.
Because when you get stuck into it, it's hard because you can't see anything else but the way that you're doing it. And if you are forcing yourself to be in uncomfortable situations, have a coach that could tell you when things are, incorrect, in your life, and listen to people who are going to give you sage advice, man, you can change before it's necessary. So that's more of a probably an individual leader aspect that we need to make sure that we're thinking about. But that's a good question.
So we hardly ever change unless if it's necessary, right? So it would be
Yes.
great, but that's
I know.
that
I
hardly
know.
ever happens. So I always go back to leadership development programs, right?
Mm.
And I always miss that we don't have anything. The foundation of the foundation of is missing, because the foundation to develop anything is really, I mean, a leader or a person is self-awareness, right?
Yes.
And we don't have that anywhere. Sometimes we throw in a few, workshops here and there, but I would never apply this approach, because, and I did that in my last place, and
Yes.
exactly the same that you just did with your mentor or coach, right? That every leadership development program should be based on what the team is saying about that particular leader.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
And it's not a competency framework. Nobody cares. Direct. Now we can have some behavior outlines, right? But what is the direct feedback of the people who I'm leading and managing?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
I am serving them. So
Hmm.
basically, I need to make sure that I bring the best out of them. But I can only do it if I understand, them, and they understand me, and we can work together. So, but the problem is exactly with, like with you, that you probably would have argued with the point, right?
Hmm.
Because we
Hmm.
don't
Hmm.
teach people, it's painful, and we don't teach people to how to take feedback, right?
Yeah.
We always
Yeah.
teach people how to
Yeah.
give feedback, but nobody is teaching anybody how to take feedback.
Yeah.
So what I did, that I with from supervisors and above, all of them, we work with the team, so that we every 3 months we send out a survey to their team
Hmm.
with three
Hmm.
test questions related to that particular supervisor, manager, or leader. And I received the feedbacks.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I sometimes moderate it, because people don't know how to express themselves. And what we
Hmm.
don't want is to, create a complete shutdown. And then I was coaching the managers and leaders. Hey, this is what your team is saying. I can see that. How do you feel about it? And with
Yes.
that, you can actually develop self-awareness of that leader, and you can start building and, subscribing other leadership development programs. You
Yeah.
cannot lead people by reading leadership books. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. You
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
First, know yourself, how they perceive you, how you come across. And then maybe you will find your answer, how to figure it out in a leadership book or in videos. Not
Yeah.
the other way. You can't skip this part. You can't.
Yeah, and it's and what's missing, and and we talk about this with how we structure the master classes. It's about implementation, right? You can read and even go to a seminar or a conference and all
Mhm.
these things, but then what are you doing with it? Like, how do you implement this? How do you put this into practice? I um just years ago, I had a coach who taught me how to do that. He said, Steve, after every conference or something you go to, like, try, like, within 1 or 2 days, put something that you've learned into practice. It may seem uncomfortable, it may seem awkward, and
Mm.
even the people around you may not get it, right? But then there's a solidification process that actually happens with that information that you have learned, and then over time it becomes a moment of recall, right? It's
Correct.
like, oh, okay, now in this situation, I could recall and bring this to this situation or this idea to bear, or I see this happening. The other part too about the feedback, right? So in our approachability framework, the SMILE framework, the
Mm.
inspires trust, that one talks about, we are not talking about everybody holding hands, singing kumbaya, and do as I say. It's not even, it's we are not talking about that in that part of the framework. We are talking about, being intentional about your feedback, right? So, because here's feedback is about trust. So
Mm.
and this is why I'm talking about inspires trust, is because if I go to Sylvia and I'm intentional with Sylvia about asking about feedback, right? And we can do the surveys too that way as well,
Mm.
right? Or if we facilitate, start that conversation where I'm bringing somebody in to actually get that information. There's a sense of intentionality about that. But if there's a one-on-one situation that I'm happy with having with someone, and I'm intentional about asking about feedback, like, do you know how much trust is created when you do that, you are literally inspiring trust between yourself and that person because they're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
wow, I wasn't anticipating that, and then when you do that, trust is built. Now you're inspiring trust. You're inspiring them ideally to possibly do the same thing, right? For their teams. And then the L in the smile framework is to lead by example, right? Once again, it's not do as I say, not as I do. It is now. What are you going to do with that?
Absolutely.
Now what are you going to do with the feedback that you just received? Right? That's
Yeah.
leading by example. You've just built trust. You don't want to break trust. So what do? You lead by example. You take the feedback, you implement it. Now you the trust is built to another layer, but now you're leading by example. So guess what? Hopefully that person will start to do the same thing. So we have to get away from you know, not be. And I love what you said about, and then here's the other thing. People can't give feedback either, right? We always try to teach people how to give feedback. People are horrible at giving feedback. And don't talk to me about the sandwich, the feedback sandwich, start with something nice, then go hard, then soft. Like, stop. Stop. Please stop with that. Am I just the only one, Sylvia? I know you don't like this stuff. That.
I hate it. Like, tell me black and white. And plus, we have data, neuroscience data from neuroscientists that you confuse the person, you confuse the brain because you're giving me a good news. So then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you drop me, and then you build me up again. It's not a roller coaster ride. You want to deliver a message, and most of the time people are so bad at it that you come away from this feedback session that, okay, am I doing good? Am I doing right? Am I supposed to change? Am I not supposed? What am I supposed to do? So I always say that if you want to apply this feedback, the sandwich technique, apply it throughout the year, because
Yes.
what
Yes.
you don't do is you don't recognize when people are doing good. So what you need to do, put the first layer of that sandwich, right? Tell people every day when they are doing something good. Okay,
Mm,
so maybe that happens for 3 months, and on in the fourth month they do something really stupid, and then you go and you just deliver that. Hey,
yeah.
what was that? And then you continue delivering the good news, right?
Yeah.
And people will not get upset with the negative news or the bad news because they know, hey, I've been praised and recognized, and praise and recognition will follow after that.
Yeah.
So it's not just that my negatives are being highlighted. But this is why people push back on feedback, because we always skip the positive. We only give, and if you ask anyone, anybody in the workforce, is feedback a negative? Does it have a negative or positive connotation? It's
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
negative.
Yeah. Yeah.
But feedback is just me giving you feedback, whether it is good, whether it is bad. But we always use it in the negative context. So when people say feedback or hear feedback, that's it. Your brain shuts down, or you are ready to fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is
You're
no
right
point
to
of it.
fight.
There is no point of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I
Absolutely not.
I had we had this thing with one of my companies I worked for. You would present your top performer for the month, right? And I
Share
remember,
loves feedback.
huh?
Share
Jen
loves
loves yes,
feedback.
she does. She does. Hey Seth, how are you? Um, we were they would have to present their top performer, and so I remember going to stores and talking to the leaders. You're like, okay, who's your top performer? And this happened like they were like, okay. I had one leader that said, okay, this is my top performer. I'm like, oh, okay, great. And I go back another week, and they were like, yeah, okay, this is my yeah, he's still like trending. We get to the meeting. So I'm expecting to hear. Let's just call his name. Let's just say I'm expecting to hear Tim's name, and and we get to the meeting. We get to that leader who's going to give out the person's name, and he said, they say another name, and I'm like,
Mm.
I I had to call him on it. I said, hold up for a second. What? Hold up. All this time, last 2 weeks, you were saying it was this person. Was saying it was Tim. Why is it this person? Well, Tim did something, and it was something very small. Something very small. And I said, so, the one thing that Tim did wrong negates all of the great things that he's that he was doing, right? And so it's like, okay, this is a teachable moment for all of you. So we just paused, and I said, okay, I'm
Mm.
sorry, I'm gonna have to derail this conversation, but we need to get past this because once we did, I saw everybody change change their top performers. I was like, you have to think about the body of work. I always think about it with feedback. It's not about the one moment in time, the two moments in time. It is literally about the body of work that this person has done, from one feedback session to the next. And then it becomes also a compounding of
Mhm.
effect, right? Be- but the tendency is that we compound it in the negative, right? You did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. Well, why not? You did this right, you did this right, you did this right. Right. So we have to think about it in that context. So that feedback process, I always think about the body of work for that individual. Right. Yes. Are there probably a couple, one or two things that we can address? 100%. But if the entire body of work speaks differently, we have to make sure that we address it in that context.
But we never talk about the positives. So how would we remember them? How would what we always talk about the negative, right? And I think this idea that people are perfect and you will never have to, they will never do anything wrong, or they will never mess up.
Yeah.
I think it's just, oh, Sylvia messed up with this presentation. Okay, how often did that happen? How often do you have problem with Sylvia? Was it
Yeah.
just once a year, every 5 years? Because the frequency what counts, right? What should be talking about? No,
Yeah.
but just once happened or twice. Okay, Sylvia has been here for 7 years. Two mistakes. I think I'm okay with that.
I know.
You know what I mean? But we're not having this human conversation in terms of performance.
Yeah.
And it's completely is the medium, right? That we look at. Because we always remember the low performance, the lowest, and the peak performance.
Right.
But performance is this is what we need to look at.
Yeah.
The medium, right? Or the average. That's what we need to look at, not the lowest and the highest, because those is just outliers. But what is the stable performance of Sylvia,
Yeah.
or Steve?
Yeah, yeah. You were talking about something around. I can't remember. It was a comment, and I wrote it down. I wanted to make sure I spoke about this because I think we also see when leaders take over a department or organization, we we tend to the team that was left over, they tend to judge whoever the new person is by, of course, the preview, by their predecessor, things like that. And what I would see often too is I would see leaders that would take over a new role, a new opportunity. And the first thing that they would say, and this just I don't know what your thoughts are about this, but this just gets under my skin. The first thing that they would do is to have a conversation about like the previous leader, the person that they just replaced. And in the context of like, what did they do wrong? What did they do right? What do all the that never set well with me. Sits well with me, and I would always talk to my team in the context of like, here's the thing: when you take over a new role, new opportunity, listen to me. At day one, you own it. You own the good, the bad, the great, the talent, the great talent, the bad talent. Like you own it. I don't care what the last person did, right? It's and you shouldn't, because now it's time for you to create and set your own mark. And you do that by asking questions, having conversations with people. I've just never been a fan of you know going. And it's not a matter of going after, but like even maybe there's some merit to it, but I have never seen that work out successfully when someone is so concerned about the person that they replaced and what they did and what they didn't do. Listen to me. You're there for a reason. Obviously, the person probably didn't do something great, or yes, the person got promoted. So guess what? Now you got
Mhm.
some big shoes to fill. So you already sort of know, right? It's not rocket science, right?
Mm.
It's not a secret. So you already know. So just handle it accordingly. Anyway, that's my little rant.
Oh, no, definitely. I think I have seen both sides, the leaders who do that and leaders who refuse to do that. And it was
Mm,
very
mm,
interesting that I saw it from a leader who I just don't like her. But she refused to talk about her predecessor because she took over and it was, a very tricky situation.
yeah.
And when the name of the person would come up, would always say that's not relevant.
Mm, mhm,
What
mhm.
happened? So I learned both sides. But what
Yeah.
what I would like to add to it, when leaders join a team or take over a team, inherit a team, as I like to call it, is that what drives me crazy is that instead of getting to know each of them, each of their
Mm.
team members, they pick one or two very
Yes.
quickly and they
Yes.
listen to this one or two about the rest of the team.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I absolutely hate that.
Oh,
And I cannot stand that. I'm like, how is it possible that it makes sense in your head to listen to two people about the rest of the team rather than just wait a couple of months and figure out who is everybody, made of, or what is everybody made of?
yeah. I would always caution my team against those individuals. I forgot. I have a name for everybody, but I can't remember what I would call that person. Or it was like it was a phrase. It's sort
Mm,
of like the first, almost like the first approacher, right?
mm.
You know, like the first approacher, that person within that team that comes up to you, and there's if you ever need anything, give
Yes.
me my thoughts, and I'm here, I'm here for you. And then it's like you gotta caution yourself against that individual. They may appear that they're coming from a very helpful perspective, and a lot of times that they're not. They're coming from a very self-serving, um, I need to anchor my position, perspective, and you have to be very cautious of those individuals. Some come with a very good heart, but I think to your point, you have to be the one to assess each and every person. So we're at the hour mark. I know you have one more. Do you have one more that you wanted to
I
share? Or
finished my
oh, you
points.
finished all your points. You finished all your
Mm.
points. Okay. All right. All right. Well, I think did I finish? I think I finished all my points. I don't even know if I did or not. It doesn't matter. We've covered so much ground. Is there a question that anyone has? I know you guys have been graciously listening to us have our conversations, and for those of you who don't know, this is the type of conversation Sylvia and I always have. Like, um, and we could probably go for another hour, but we want to we want to be um we want to be respectful of each other's time, and then of your time. If you don't know, Sylvia is you see her shirt, right? She's part of the campus, and she's actually one of our amazing instructors, and she has a an upcoming master class. Sylvia, while I get the URL into the chat, could you tell everybody a little bit about your master class?
Yes, it's all about designing employee experiences and from the manager and the leader point of view. So I always said as a leader, as a manager, that I get to design how my team members, my employees experience me and the workplace. So we will be talking about that because we cannot just rely on HR that to create, engaging and motivating workforce, because this is really in the hands of managers and leaders. So throughout the an hour and a half masterclass, we will be looking at each section of the employee life cycle and what is it that we need to look out for, how we can design them, and how we can think about employee experience differently.
Yeah, that's and Sherry Jones, who's also in the chat, she has a master class coming up too. And then if any of you are free tomorrow, I'm gonna be going live think 10 a.m. Tomorrow. I'm a morning person. If you guys haven't noticed that or not, but we're gonna have Matt Mueller on, and Matt is gonna be kicking off our masterclass series next week. So we will be definitely discussing his masterclass. Also, we will be introducing and talking about our sponsors. We've had some amazing sponsored partnerships come on board with the campus. You know, our annual report that's coming up too, and also with the podcast. So super excited about that. A lot of great stuff going on. So I actually will be live on Substack at the same time. You know, Substack now has the ability um, for individuals to use a this decoder, not decoder ring, but this decoder functionality to actually go live. So I will be going live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Substack all at the same time, which is actually really cool. So if any of you are free, I think you will get the notification that I'm live. So I would love to have all of you and be a part of that conversation. And make sure you, if you haven't subscribed to Sylvia's newsletter, tell you what, it is a thing to behold. Amazing, raw, like data driven ideas and perspectives. She doesn't hold back. That's just her style, and that's what I appreciate about her. So make sure you guys go check out her newsletter. What do you have going on in your world? Like professionally that you want to share with people too?
Well, I'm just about to embark on a project, on a 6 months project for a company. So redesigning their talent management structure. So that will be fun. And I'm actively on putting the standards, the employee experience lifecycle standards on the market. So that's what's keeping me
That's
busy
it.
right now.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Where's my? I got a button here. I think. Where's that? I don't know.
Success is
Oh,
something.
that's not it. Where's the button? I got a button. I got a button that I want to. Because that deserves something. Where is it at? There we go. I don't know if that people. There we go. That deserves the air horn. No, because I'm excited. I know. We've been talking about that, and I know your word for the year, right? And
Yes.
you you are going after that. So I appreciate that. I'm super excited and proud of you for all the work that you've been doing and putting out there in the marketplace. So it's really cool. So um, if no one has any questions, we will let you get back to your Friday morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. And Sylvia, as always, thank you so much. And looking forward to our next conversation. We will be having a instructor meetup coming up pretty soon as well.
Cool. Thank you so much, Steve. And thank you, everybody, for spending an hour with us. And sorry
Uh,
for being late. We had some technical issues.
yeah, we did. So, all right, everybody, have a good day.
Bye.
All right, bye.